Good afternoon. This is Gino show. Yeah, I'm in Acton, and I have a gentleman here that I met him several months ago. Unfortunately, for the pandemic, we were not able to have him in TV. But I'm going to right away ask him to tell me a nice story. And he's a nice gentleman, and also he will be able to help a lot of people in his business. So let me introduce to you the public in Acton and surrounding area. I have to have the card because I haven't seen him for a long time, and sometimes I even forget my name. Okay, don't say to anybody anything like that. He's a Dr. Lars Lenders, DC Ribbon CN. Am I correct?
It's a lot of letters.
Lot of letters. Anyway, just remember Dr. Lars Lenders is a clinical neurological rehabilitation. He will explain to you much better than I can. Okay, you have to be patient with me. I'm from Venice, Italy. Sometimes, I get carried away. Nevertheless, here he is, Dr. Len. Would you please tell me the beginning of your story of the adventure from the past going to the future?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Gino. This is a privilege because in my work, the most difficult feeling sometimes is knowing that there may be somebody just around the corner who could benefit from what you do, and yet they don't know about you. So this is going to help a lot of people potentially, and it's in keeping with the way you always run your show, and I know you help a lot of people regularly with your show, and it's very charitable, and I appreciate that. So I was happy to come, and we did get delayed several times, but if that's the biggest complaint we've got during this time, then it's not so bad. Thanks for having me. To answer your question, a story about me, we can do an origin story. How's that?
That's beautiful.
I was born and raised in Washington State, and once I graduated from college there, I felt a bit aimless. I felt like I didn't want to sit in a classroom taking notes anymore.
Wow.
So the obvious next step is to go directly into the Army.
Uh-oh.
And so I was in the Army.
Huh?
Well, I definitely learned it along the way, if I didn't already have it. But I was in the Army for 6 years, and while I was there, I had many different jobs, but I would say the most significant of them to me was as an Army engineer. And during that time, my platoon and I conducted route clearance, which basically consisted of finding improvised explosive devices in Iraq and getting rid of those devices one way or the other, which often meant having them explode, whether it was by our encouragement or on their own. And during this time, I didn't have the education I have now. So I was watching the signs and symptoms of traumatic brain injuries all around me.
I'm sure.
But I didn't know the first thing about how to recognize it really or to address it at all. And then we would go to be evaluated by the doctors. If you get blown up, it's automatic. You go in there and you get checked out. So my whole platoon was in there far too frequently. And I noticed that there really wasn't, people didn't have the knowledge to identify the real risks of what we were dealing with, or to address it, to help, or to say, okay, when you get home, here's what you need to do. That wasn't in any of our available vocabulary.
They came out of your initiative, huh?
Absolutely. So I got home, transitioned out of the military after a couple of deployments, and that drove my path to receiving the education that now allows me to work with people to help them repair damage done to their brains when possible, and to regain function that has been lost, or even in some cases, often, to acquire function that they maybe weren't born with or that didn't develop. And so I went to chiropractic school at the Palmer College of Chiropractic in Florida, and while I was there is where I really started to learn about neurology.
I got it.
And from there, I had the opportunity to receive board certifications in neurology and electrodiagnosis. And so from a couple of different angles, I can much more accurately assess the level of dysfunction that a person may have after an injury or after while surviving neurodegenerative disorder like Alzheimer's, and then even some neurodevelopmental disorders where I like to say, to simplify, things just didn't wire up in an ideal way, a way that gives the person the amount of control they want over their life that they could or should have. And everything that I do is an attempt to give people or help them achieve more function.
On their body.
Yes.
On their speech. And,
absolutely. And the human experience is too complex to say we can just address these structural elements, but it is an absolute it's an absolute necessity that we do address. We don't ignore structural changes in our brain in the event of injury particularly. And at the same time, even if we do get everything functioning, we can't ignore the other facets that make us human, emotions and our mental state, which is interesting. This is a bit of a segue, but so I'm the director of the Brain Center, which is housed within Cherubino Health Center in Southborough. The Brain Center actually just brought on a psychotherapist. And so we now have the ability to say, while I'm working with a patient, we can see your function returning.
yeah.
But how do you feel, and do you need to address how you feel as a whole person from another aspect? So we now offer that, and it's optional. But oftentimes, because of the amount of distress that these types of injuries often bring with them, anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress, we can get a lot of improvement from the techniques that I do. But then to ignore what's left over and still needs to be addressed is negligent. And now we have the ability to bring it all together in one place.
So they really help. When a patient comes to you, you not only see him physically to help him deal in the future, but also you can identify if something's wrong without any physical problem.
Absolutely.
But you might figure out something like, she needs mental health, okay? She needs this, she needs that. So you identify. You just say, okay, you look okay today, okay, bye, I'll see you next month.
Right.
You identify, you control, you're trying to get things out of the patient so you can adjust it and do the best to help.
Absolutely. And
beautiful.
It's always under the control of the patient. Every aspect of their care is under their control. It's just something that we saw come up often enough where we could say, well, it would be nice if we could also offer these services under one roof. And that is the philosophy of the Cherubino Health Center in general, because there are other doctors with several different specialties in that office, and just because someone is working with me does not mean they won't benefit from a referral across the hallway. And that's what the whole health center idea is, and it helps people a lot.
That's really something that people don't realize. It's an important step, because they see you can identify the situation. You say, okay, now you go see this gentleman, go see the other gentleman, so forth. So you are like a little angel, trying to figure out and trying to help people. That's what you are.
Well, I appreciate that. And I mean, it takes one to know one in this case. I've watched your show. I know what you're out here doing. So, but the real foundation of my work is recognizing that what we used to think was permanent in the way of brain change is not necessarily so anymore. You can have damaged neurons cells in your brain that have actually died permanently. I mean, we have billions of them, but it's not as if you want to lose function in any way or have them die off. Or you can have breakages in the way those cells communicate out with the rest of your body.
They can be repaired.
And they can be repaired. They can be repaired. We can encourage your brain to reach out and make new connections to work around the damage. And in some isolated cases or areas of the brain, you can actually regrow these neurons. And the only thing that's required is to give your brain a push. And now we know more about the techniques required to do that in a way where 30 years ago people may have been laughed out of the profession for even guessing that this was what was happening, whereas now it's fundamental to the way we get our brains to repair themselves, readjust, and create better ways of doing things. And so, not to belabor the point, but I work with patients who have often lost a significant amount of function due to their life circumstances, and invariably we see improvement using these techniques. The fact is that because of this property of neuroplasticity in our brains, the brain's ability to restructure itself for better function, a person doesn't even necessarily have to have had an injury. If I had never used these techniques, no injuries that I've had anytime recently, and I go in and I do these therapies, it is going to improve my brain function because these are techniques that you won't get just walking around in the real world. It's advanced, and it taps directly into the way that our brains prefer to be stimulated to grow and build better ways of doing things. It just so happens that my passion is for helping people who have lost.
You just show the way. You practically show them the way.
Oh, absolutely.
What about somebody that, because they go in the army, they come back and they have lost a leg, an arm, they go in depression, they become, alcoholic, and they become a drug addict. I know you can help them. So they need somebody to tell them that, not to worry, we can help you. So he doesn't have to do on his own. His purpose to listen and then apply his force to get better.
Yes, absolutely.
So that's beautiful.
And one thing that's really important to recognize about what you just described, soldiers coming back from war, or anyone who's survived a trauma.
Yes, terrible.
And they have post-traumatic stress, which is, it's so easy. Our brains are so adaptable that the post-traumatic stress is meant to be a survival mechanism to keep you out of danger. But it gets to a point where it's not helpful. It's actually harming you. And I think one of the ways to take the stigma away from it is to describe to people that the way our brains change after traumatic experiences, it's nobody's fault. And it is something that we can repair, or at least repair to a degree. And for example, I saw some research within the last 2 years, I believe it was, that said these researchers had identified that soldiers coming back from war who had suffered explosive concussions came back, and an extremely high percentage of them developed alcoholic tendencies, addictions, something upwards of 80% of these people, because of the type of brain change and the area that had been affected. Well, so if we say, well now, wait, we've identified that this is structural change. Yes, there are emotional components to everything, but if we address the structural change, if we can repair that and improve function, then how much easier is the rest of the journey? And so, as a segue, the way that I met you was also at a gathering where I was present with the Clear Path for Veterans New England, which is an organization that helps veterans. They're based in Fort Devens.
That's where you were an air. They meet in Shirley. In Shirley Rotary.
Air, that was what I couldn't
remember. And the young lady gave me the card,
yes.
Which I still have it.
Oh, good. Well, and you see, I've changed my card since then.
Yeah.
Yes, and that was an extremely fortunate meeting.
You made a nice impression, and when I went back, they were talking about you, and you were able actually to force somebody to go, not to see you, but to see another doctor. But I'm sure the other doctor would say, I don't know if I'm qualified. I think you better go to see you.
Oh. Well, we're all here to help, and there aren't enough people who, my work it's a conservative approach to getting this type of brain change. And what I always say is we should try the conservative approach first before we go to more extreme techniques.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing the ability that you have to help other people. You know, a lot of people like to help other people, but we do what we can. But let's say you doing as a professional, and you're just like I say, God is helping you out, because I'm telling you, He sent that angel.
Well,
to be trained.
I appreciate that very much,
Yeah.
and actually, I'm very lucky because the organization that I work with are all like that. We have a philosophy that we're here to help.
We are very lucky.
And it's our privilege to help. And any amount of improvement when someone comes to you for help is worth trying for.
It's worth it.
And in these techniques, what I would encourage people to do if they're curious about the kind of change that I see in my practice is if you go to my website, thebraincenter.com. It's got a hyphen between brain
Say
and
that
center.
again, very slowly.
So, thebrain-center.com.
Beautiful.
All right, and they'll put the information up in writing, I believe, as well, so you can go to it. But essentially, there's a success stories tab. You can click on and see some of the variety.
The improvement that
Absolutely.
people have.
These are testimonials directly from former
nice.
patients. And that's important because it's easy to listen to the way I talk and say, oh, if I have a concussion, I know where to go.
Yes.
But until you see the list of people who have come to me and the improvements that they've gotten, you really don't maybe conceptualize just how broad this the improvements can be.
Can be, yes.
So for instance, if I say to you, your brain is running the whole show. It's in charge of nearly everything that happens in your body, right? Well, then what aspect of your life doesn't have the potential to improve if we work on improving brain function?
I already saw you when you came to Rotary, and everybody was impressed. So I said, I got to get this gentleman here. He was in the Army, he 6 years, he learned to be doctors, he wanted to help, and now he help a lot of people. You keep your mouth shut, Gino, because you're going to get in trouble.
You're not going to scare me off. So what I don't want to forget to mention too, because what you're talking about is really this unique ability that we're creating to create opportunities for more people to come and get this type of care. And if I'm not the right person, I will always direct a person, a patient
Because
to the
you
right
have a
person.
chain of
Absolutely.
doctors.
And if it's not in my office.
But I do have a feeling that you'll be able to help a lot of people.
Well, that's what we hope to offer. But moving on to additional opportunities for growth, the Clear Path for Veterans New England in Devens, they purchased the old Army hospital there, massive facility, and they're having it built up to state-of-the-art
that's beautiful.
standards. And the conversation with them is, first of all, as an organization, they help veterans in any way that they see an opportunity.
They need a lot of help.
And one of the ways that they are developing now is this wellness center that they're building. And they've asked me to take up a little bit of real estate there and to help people, veterans, and it may be open to general public eventually once we're up and running. But the idea is veterans would come to the wellness center. They'd have the option of seeing me. They'd have the option of several of the other modalities, or there's a yoga studio, there are weightlifting, a weightlifting area. There's several types of wellness therapy happening.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And they have the canine program downstairs.
Oh, no kidding.
It's a really lovely organization that's going to help a lot of veterans, and is already helping them. And so to be a part of that is really exciting. And the most important aspect of it for me as a veteran, because I can relate to the experiences that people have had, is that the foundation of the care and the help that a veteran receives when coming to ClearPath is that they don't pay for it.
At least we are generous enough. They go to fight for our liberty, and they fight for other people to be free from oppressors. Of course, they should have all that quality, and you know.
Well,
The
we
best
want
we
to
can
we want to
do.
give the very best that we can, and it's in
Appreciate it.
development.
Yeah.
But we can update you when everything is spun up and operating, and this is an opportunity to let a lot of people know.
You can come back. You remember that. You can always come back.
Okay.
You call me. You let me know. You can call the studio. The studio will call me. Say, "Are you ready, Gino? He's coming back." Whenever you want. Remember that.
Thank you.
We're here to help.
All right, I'll see you
You
tomorrow.
know? No, sure, no problem.
I got the bug. I'll be back.
Okay, that's it. Anything else would you like to tell us?
Well, I will say this too, because I have a very narrow focus. I want to be able to do the type of work that I do almost exclusively, and so I try to be the expert in that very narrow focus. However, when a patient comes to me, it's also my job to recognize that maybe they have nutritional needs.
Yeah.
Maybe their exercise habits need to change.
Yes.
Can we improve sleep? The other things we've already talked about, like depression, anxiety.
Yeah. Yes.
The way a person achieves full function it's the responsibility of each person. And in this culture, that's not always easy to hear, because I can tell you from my own personal experience, if somebody were to say, here's your get out of jail free card, you don't have to do exercise today, how many of us would take that option? But
If you tell them.
the fact of the matter is, we are living in a use it or lose it body with
Yes.
use it or lose it function. And when it comes to achieving this type of improvement neurologically, we work for it. And patients, they get out what they put in. And I tell them from the beginning, you cannot expect to get your brain to rewire itself unless you force it. And two of the principles of getting neuroplastic change that we exercise foundationally are the therapies need to be intense, and they need to be quite repetitive. And there are many more, but no patient of mine would tell you that those two are not front and center, because they come in, and as an example of a typical care plan, if a person were to come to me the way that I expect for best results, typically I will see them 5 days a week for about an hour, maybe more per day. And if they come, my requirement in the beginning typically is they would come for 10 visits, so 2 weeks of hard work. And at that point, we can do a reassessment and evaluate how well is this working? Do we think we need to change the plan? Could we get more out of this if we modify our technique? Or is this not working, and do I need to direct you elsewhere? Because that's a huge part of my job too.
You give them the right direction.
And it doesn't even matter what a person comes in for. Certain techniques work for certain people that don't work for the next person, or aren't going to work at that time. Maybe something else needs to be addressed first.
That's beautiful.
So it's intense. And I will say that I've had patients come to me and determine that full, I should say, maximum improvement has been reached within 2 weeks.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And then I've had patients who came for between 6 and 11, although that's a little bit on the high side.
Wow.
That's a very long time.
Because it takes time for the individual to understand.
Yes.
Or to change the habits.
And where I recognize my responsibility to dismiss some patients when we're getting kind of farther along, and I say, I believe that the amount of brain change you've gotten from these techniques has been maximized. The rate of return on your improvement is going to kind of diminish. You're already up here. That person can still elect to continue if they have personal goals.
I see.
But it's my responsibility to draw that line and say, here's where I told you you probably don't need everything that this has to offer, but a person can continue to come. And that's the only time I see those long programs.
Sometimes take a little longer for some individual.
Absolutely.
Especially when he goes through difficult drama.
Another aspect of this work that I think is incredibly important for people to at least have a conversation with me about is that, for the most part, when a person comes to me, I'm the last person on the long list of people they have attempted to see. And I'm talking about something they've probably never heard of before. And so it can be a tough sell. So I stick with the basics. I say, this is actually just how our brains work. Let's see if how well yours responds to this and how quickly. But these people often, patients have been medicated. And in our veteran population, you see that. And of course, there's a time and a place for everything. But one thing that is very encouraging is that I'll have patients come, and over the course of their improvement doing these therapies, they will have the opportunity to have a conversation with the prescriber and say, I'm doing much better. Can we talk about
diminish
tapering and
tapering? Yeah, not dividing, but the drugs.
Right.
Yeah.
And,
that's nice.
And
so you've seen that then?
Almost universally.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And don't get me wrong. Like I said, there's a time and a place, and that is not my profession.
Yeah.
But what I do know is, if a person no longer needs that intervention in their life, why take it? And so again, that's a conversation between that patient and the professional that they've conferred with to start taking it in the first place.
That's beautiful.
But like with anything,
it doesn't work for 100%.
No.
But at least you try 99%.
Sure. And I mean, even if you had a morning ritual that was unnecessary in your life and you realize, I don't have to do that anymore, you wouldn't continue to do it for no reason.
Right.
And that is kind of what we're aiming for, is human health that is self-sustaining, where a person puts in the work, use it or lose it, and then reaps the benefit of a body and brain that work better, more efficiently.
See, I told you, you going all the way to make sure the individual is getting better. I'm not going to say no more. I understand what you're saying. You have to understand, if you need help, you get in touch with the doctor. I can't say my friend. No, I got to say the doctor. Okay? All right. The doctor will be able to help you to a certain extent. If you improve 99%, and you complain, you come to see me, then I kick you because you deserve it. He's gonna do the best to provide your health 99%. You know, you gotta leave a little bit, you know what I mean? Sometimes 99%, I call it perfect. All right?
Beautiful. And if you are gonna go around kicking people, keep it below the knees. Don't ruin any of the progress we've made.
Anything else would you like to tell me?
No, I think anybody who's watching, particularly if you're skeptical, my job is to educate, it's not to convince.
Yeah,
I wouldn't do the work that I do if I hadn't seen the benefits and if I hadn't been blown away by it.
You must have seen a lot in 6 years. You did your best as an engineer trying to eliminate those bomb people so they won't get hurt. And all those people, they go into the fight. They help this country, and they help other country, and they come home, no legs, no arm, and you are there to help them out. And God bless you, man, and I hope you live to be 1,000 years because we need people like you.
Trust me, I'd rather pass my information on than live that long, but thank you. I think that's a good summary.
Ladies and gentlemen, you see Gino shows. I hope you understand, and trying to get this doctor, and I'm going to mention again, and my friend, we will show you in the TV, Dr. Lars Lander. If I didn't say it right, write me something and say, Gino, it wasn't correct. But you know something? You say, I got to forgive him. He come from Venice. God bless you and have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.